This is my leadership book critique on the psychodynamics of enlightened leadership, coping with chaos. Let me introduce myself. My name is Christine Cabrera, and I'm in my first semester of my master's degree. I've enjoyed reading about leadership and understanding and everything it entails. In my view, leadership is more of the effectiveness and the strategic approach to meaning. This book has been quite instrumental in enforcing my ideologies about leadership. This is my bibliographic citation on the psychodynamics of enlightened leadership, coping with chaos. In my introduction, I will relieve the leader's environment is made up of people, groups, and organizations, all of which are instrumental interactions between the leader and those that surround him or her. Leadership is a critical term in organizational theory as well as in public administration and administrators. To achieve this goal, the analysis will examine many theoretical approaches to leadership, explain how they work, identify their applications, analyze the advantages and disadvantages, and define how leadership functions in diverse culture clusters. This book aims to savor the concept of leadership through a vast concept of management and positive strategies of leadership. When beginning a study of leadership, the first question that must be addressed is, what is that exactly? There are a variety of different prospects on what leadership is and how to learn more about it. For example, one way is to consider leadership to be a form of social influence rather than formal position. As a perception management approach, social influences theory is concerned with the demands of individuals for acceptance by others with whom they interact in their daily lives and in the places of employment. Mintroff and Kleeman, 2021. Leaders, according to this perspective, are excellent makers of impressions. They do not manage what others think, but rather impressions that they create in their own followers. So the leaders serve as a role model for others, who then emulate the leader's mannerism and attitudes while also adopting his or her own viewpoints and ideas. When beginning a study of leadership, the first question that must be addressed is, what exactly is it? In a second approach to leadership. There are many. Rather than focusing just on the social definition of leadership, this perspective incorporates elements such as experience, competence, and technical knowledge into the formulation of a definition of leadership. According to this definition, for example, leadership can be defined as an individual's ability to coordinate action with subordinates. Another way of looking at leadership is to be complicated interplay between the leader and the individuals, groups, and organizations that make up the leader's environment. A set of processes designed to garner support from followers in order to achieve a common goal can be defined as leadership using this approach. A third approach to understanding leadership is to consider the contents of the study of social organizations. The relationship between the leadership and organizational structure is evident in this preserved diagram. According to this viewpoint, leadership is regulated as a critical component of any company. For the sake of definition, leadership can be described as a social relationship of influence between the leader and his or her followers that is codified in an organizational structure. As a result, leadership encompasses all of the actors inside the organization, individuals, groups, and departments, as well as the way in which the organization functions. In this section, we discuss theoretical approaches to the application of leadership. Fourth, one that stresses both with similarities and distinctions between the leaders and followers in the relation method. Leaders are viewed from a variety of perspectives, including behavioral and socio-psychological perspectives, as with political and economical perspectives. Leadership and following, according to this viewpoint, do not necessarily have anything in common with one another. Mintroff and Kleeman, 2021. As social actors, leaders are distinguished from the followers in that they set the agenda for the organization and have complete control over the allocation of tangible resources. Instead of being seen merely as followers, leaders are seen as agents of change. The power relationship between the leader and a group of followers is then understood as the power relationship between the individual leader and a group of followers. The four basic approaches to leadership philosophy, each on their own set of advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, each technique provides a unique perspective on how to do the leadership research. Each approach, on the other hand, has its own set of biases that needs to be considered. My critique is showing one method of examining leadership is to examine it in its perspective of ethical consideration. Followers, according to this viewpoint, are more responsive to ethical leaders, those who are unselfish and driven by service. According to some, leadership possesses an ethical component that can be used as a foundation for the development of ethic-based leadership models. Accordingly, leadership can be considered as a source of inspiration for employees since it offers them with possibilities for growth and development, which ultimately leads to greater success and pleasure at the workplace. Another method is to look at leadership in the contents of a particular culture or society. Cultural influences have the impact on leadership according to their viewpoint. The qualities of leadership and followers across cultures, the sorts of organizational existing in other cultures, as well as the functions performed by distinct cultural organizations may all be noticed as examples of such variance. The traits of leaders and followers may alter depending on the society in which they live. Different cultures have a different variety of characteristics, and one of the most significant variances is how they define leadership. Mithoff and Kleeman, 2021. The behavior of leadership may be characterized differently in different cultures, and this has an impact on the sort of leader that is produced in each of those cultures and vice versa. A specific function that needs to be performed by an organization is often the case. The role may include operations such as manufacturing, retailing, building, or administrating support for the business in which it is employed. Organizations in any case perform an extremely vital function. They create an atmosphere in which individuals can collaborate in order to achieve the common goal. Organizational leadership is divided into three categories: directing, coordinating, and engineering. The mechanism of conveying culture within an organization are influenced by the actions of the leadership team. Leaders play an important role in the process by educating new members about the principles and conventions of the organization. Example, a new employee may be informed by his or her management of the expectations placed on him in the position and how he or she should act in coordination with those expectations. This is an illustration of how culture transmission processes are carried out through work, through the words and deeds and leadership communication, the values of the organization to their people. Mithoff and Kleeman, 2021. There are cultural differences between the leaders and their subordinates. My recommendations are, if we think of culture in terms of common meaning systems and group connections, then any disparities between the groups within a wider target audience can be thought of as subcultures, which are distinct from one another. As a social and interactive process that incorporates the relationship between leaders and followers, leadership can be characterized interestingly. Leaders, according to this point of view, should be conscious of their own cultural values as well as the cultural values of the followers. Then they can make judgments about who and how to connect with followers in order to attain particular goals that are essential to both leaders and followers as a result of the increased knowledge. When leaders and followers come from diverse cultural backgrounds, though, there may be difficulties. This is where we try and get as much awareness as we can. I concluded that leadership, according to the book, explores a bigger perspective of defining and understanding and the articulations that is strategic meaning to involve effective management. This is a focus which is amplified by the various concepts brought out and the assistance to attain and enforce change in strategy. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you're more knowledgeable in the topic of leadership.